And when we look at Scorpio, I'm going to get into a little astrology now. When we look at Scorpio, it is the first transpersonal sign. So think of this metaphor, or an allegory rather. If you're walking along the beach in Florida and you walk out into the ocean, there's very long beaches there, right? And you walk, and all of a sudden, whoop, it just drops off. That's Scorpio. See, basically, you're walking from the first house. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And you get to Libra, and you're kind of on, your toes a little bit in Libra, 7th house, and whoomp. You go off into the depths of Scorpio. And that is the transpersonal space. Once Saturn went into Scorpio, it sets into effect every single sign that will follow it until it gets to Aries, where there is a reset and a new start with Saturn in Aries. So every single Saturn phase that follows Saturn in Scorpio, from Scorpio to Pisces, is part of what was initiated at the end of Libra and the beginning of Scorpio, and it ends at the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries. Okay? This is how this works. So one of the things that happened in Saturn and Scorpio is we uncovered, or it bubbled up to the surface, the Sandusky and the Saville pieces. Now the Sandusky piece was not handled well enough. They were covering up big time that Sandusky and this second mile foundation. Covered it up big time. Because you had these guys who were on the board of trustees and part of the, heavy hitting alumni at Penn State, and Sandusky was their pimp. And he was getting them boys. And these are not just any boys, these were boys without fathers. They're boys without fathers. It's terrible. It's predatory. A lot of guys, a lot of people. What happened? You know what happens? Do you know what happens to these people? They're compromised. They are compromised. And they will do anything. If you tell them to vote a certain way or put money in a certain direction or support this candidate, they'll do it, and they'll do it again and again and again because they are compromised. The last thing they want to do is go to prison, especially for child molestation. So it started with Scorpio. Here we are, Saturn in Sagittarius, and we start to have these low-level arrests. Right? There's a lot of arrests that are taking place right now for trafficking and abuse. It's happening. It's happening. You're not reading a lot about it. And to me, that's actually encouraging. Because if they were making a big deal out of it, if they wanted to say, hey, we're giving you the truth, you'd hear a lot about it. It'd be right there front and center. It'd be, oh, yeah, good, it's happening. And all of a sudden, it stopped happening. How many times have we seen this? They give you a little bit, and you feel like you're getting, the majority of it, and then they just go, and we're on to the next thing. Well, because they're not publicizing this very much, it's actually, to me, very encouraging. And hopefully, they will be able to amass enough evidence, because this is it, man. You play that game Jenga, and you pull this one piece, and the whole thing just goes, collapses. So Saturn in Sagittarius, we're looking at sort of the legal ramifications. Wait till Saturn gets into Capricorn. That is going to be a very interesting iteration or evolution of Saturn in Scorpio, because what are we dealing with Saturn in Capricorn? We're dealing with the government, we're dealing with politics, we're dealing with politicians, we're dealing with people in power, celebrity, 10th house. So if we're following the arc of Saturn in Scorpio, and here we are, Saturn in Sagittarius, now where were some of these arrests made? Some of these arrests were made in Haiti. They picked up, 35 young girls that were being ferreted out of Haiti for trafficking, and they arrested about 25 people. That's a very Saturn and Sagittarius thing. It's overseas, right? I'm telling you, man, this is it could blow up in Saturn and Capricorn. This could be the linchpin. And remember, they're going to have a big, who knows if it's big. 25th, they're going to have a rally in Washington, D.C. about Pizzagate. Apparently, there's a big Trump rally happening that day, too. I wonder if it's there to overshadow the Pizzagate stuff. It's like, let's have a big Trump rally. Let's focus on that. Give Pizzagate this Pizzagate rally 20 seconds on the news. We'll spend a half an hour on Trump and maybe the violence that'll break out at that rally. Keep your eyes on that. So this Saturn transit, or the Saturn evolution through the signs, at some point Saturn is going to catch up with Pluto and Capricorn, and watch out for that. It's not going to be, it'll be before Pluto gets to 27 degrees, which is where it is in the United States natal chart. By that time, I believe Saturn will be in Aquarius, which could be so when Saturn hits Aquarius, and we go into the Pluto return of the United States, that's going to look one or two ways. It's either going to be kind of the rebuilding and the restructure of a new paradigm, which is going to be more Aquarian and less Capricornian, or which could be good. I see Aquarius as maybe a little bit differently than other people. I see Aquarius as being interdependent and a bunch of interdependencies connected to a whole. Right? It's not like there's the whole, which is like the Borg mind. That's, to me, that's like the dark version of Aquarius. It's the Borg mind. It's the collective. But it's the collective that can't think for itself. It's kind of like, these brainless leftists. And I hate to say it, they are. I mean, they're part of the Borg mind. They can't think for themselves. I see Aquarius as being people that are very informed and interdependent, and yet they're connected to a macro and a whole. It starts from the person and inside, and it moves outwards, versus the outwards moving in. Does that make sense? So we have two versions that could come up during Saturn in Aquarius, because clearly there's going to be some level of reformation with this Pluto return with the United States in 2022 at 27 degrees Capricorn. It's right at the edge. And so then Pluto will go into Aquarius. Pluto goes into Aquarius in 2024. And we will be in a new paradigm at that point, or at least the beginning of a new paradigm. I'm all for it. I'm ready for this, distended, bloated, denial-based version of the United States and its government to just go away. I hope we get more into locality than anything else. I hope the local piece really becomes much more vibrant. In a vision of the future, which is almost like the Hunger Games, the United States in John Teeter's time has more than one president. I think it has about, is it 12 presidents or something like that? I don't know the number. But there's more than one president in the timeline, in the Teeter timeline. And that actually makes sense to me. I think having a president who has this kind of, it's become this weird power trip with executive orders. It's almost like being a king, which is really what we didn't want, which is why this whole thing started on one level. And there's a lot of other reasons, but clearly that was one of the reasons. So maybe having multiple presidents could make sure that we don't have an abuse of power. I'm open to that. Today's St. Patrick's Day. Shout out to my Shamrock homies. I got Irish on my mother's side with two separate matrilineal lines. How about that? On her father's side. Actually, it's on her mother's side and her mother and her mother's father. So there we go, two separate lines. So one's patrilineal, one's matrilineal. But shout out to my Irish homies. St. Patrick's Day is the only day where quote unquote Northern Europeans or white people quote unquote can have a holiday. Like, this is the one day that's set aside for us. Really, if you think about it. Now, Black America gets a whole month, and that's great. It's great. A whole month to celebrate cultural identity. Fantastic. We get one day. And not only do you get one day, but we get one day to basically get shit-faced. That's the holiday. That is the one holiday that's celebrating kind of our European roots. It's a drunken holiday. The last hour I talked about, last hour you never heard, the mystery show. I talked about my son, who is this young, white American male. Now, yes, there is no race, and we are transcendent. We are citizens of the universe. Truly. We're not these forms. And yet, ironically, paradoxically, we are these forms. You got born into one in this lifetime. I got born into being a middle-aged white American male. Hello? That's a down demographic, by the way. That is not a very popular demographic. But I've always been a champion of the underdog. So now I'm a champion of myself. But I've got my kid. And I'm trying to keep him and keep his head clear and straight. So that at some point, he doesn't feel guilty about his skin tone. At some point, he doesn't feel guilty about being a male. This is not easy to do. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So try to keep his head straight around this. And I don't, and it's like, and I said this in the last hour, I don't want anybody to advance at the expense of another person. I just don't. I don't think it's right. It doesn't matter, who it is. And when it does happen, it is wrong because it's exploitation. And we should stand up for it no matter what the skin color or what the gender is. Now, I know the knock is, oh yeah, white man, you're the cause of all the problems, so you don't get any slack. Sorry. In a compassionate and just universe, we all get slack. So we lost touch with that. This is one of the tenets of Christianity that I think is an essential one. One that we're losing more and more of. Everybody just wants to get over and get theirs and get their resources and screw everybody else. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But I try my best to have my kid understand and recognize his own self-worth, so that down the line nobody's going to hijack it. And that's my mission in this lifetime. Not at the expense of anybody else, but reinforcing his own uniqueness and individuality, and then not to buy into the lie, not to buy into the deception, not to buy into the illusion. Because the last thing I need with him is for him to feel inferior or guilty or massaged and managed and herded by this mentality that is completely disempowering. We need to empower all of us, not just certain groups or select individuals. And that's the way it is. That's how I see it. So I got into this Saturn and Sagittarius trip and was talking about levels and layers of truth. And there are a lot of them out there that at some point we need to get into it. We've got until December. We have until December, because there's something's going to happen here. Also with Saturn and Capricorn, if we can't get this right, it could be a real lockdown on our ability to speak truth to power. I was talking about, in the last hour, Arthur Topham, who's an author and a publisher in Canada. And Arthur had all of his books and his publishing company's website taken away. Because Canada, which has hate speech laws, said that Arthur was dabbling in hate speech, because Arthur had books that he was publishing that was critiquing and analyzing and criticizing things like the Holocaust, which are, I believe, open for discussion and need to be open. Everything needs to be on the table. Everything. 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 not just a select few